Resurrecting dinosaurs may be a Hollywood fantasy, but bringing back other extinct animals is closer to reality than you think. In fact, some scientists say that we already have the technology to clone a mammoth today. But should we do it? De-extinction is the buzzword in some circles these days, especially among environmentalists who want to use genetic engineering to bring back species lost to human activity. Some of these campaigns are more feasible than others. The focus so far has been on species like the passenger pigeon, the dodo bird, and the woolly mammoth, all charismatic animals that were driven to extinction by humans. But should we really be bringing them back? What would it take to do it, and what would be the consequences? Before we answer that, let's understand how animals become extinct in the first place. When we talk about extinction, we're talking about the end of an entire lineage. A species goes extinct when its population dies off completely and there are no more individuals left. It's important to note that extinction is a natural part of evolution. New species arise while old ones go extinct, leaving empty niches for new life to fill. This constant cycle ensures diversity over time. But today, species are going extinct at a rate that's much higher than normal, largely due to climate change and habitat loss driven by human activity. While some animal populations can bounce back if given enough time, others are gone forever. When that happens, it's hard to predict how the rest of the ecosystem will respond. Take, for example, the American chestnut tree. It was once a dominant species in eastern hardwood forests, but a fungus that arrived accidentally from Asia in the early 20th century killed billions of them, reducing the forest canopy by as much as a quarter in some areas. Its disappearance created a cascade of effects throughout the forest ecosystem, affecting everything from soil erosion to the animals that lived there. But if we could turn back time and bring the American chestnut back, would that help or hurt the environment? Bringing a species back from the dead, also known as de-extinction, has been a dream of scientists and science fiction writers for decades, and in recent years, it's become a hot topic in the environmental movement as well. Some advocates argue that if we could bring back species that were lost due to human activity, we could restore damaged ecosystems and even reverse climate change. Others say that we shouldn't mess with nature and leave extinct animals where they belong, in the past. So who's right? Well, it depends. First, let's talk about the science behind extinction. There are two main ways to bring back an extinct animal. The first is cloning, which involves taking the DNA from a preserved sample like a skin cell, and then placing it into a closely related species that is still alive. The second method is genome editing, in which scientists modify the genome of a living species to make it more like an extinct one. Both methods require a lot of genetic knowledge and skill, but they also raise a number of ethical concerns. For example, what happens to the clone after it's brought back? Will it be able to live a full life, or will it be nothing more than a lab experiment? And what if the animal escapes or is released into the wild? Could it survive on its own, or will it need constant care? These are all important questions that need to be answered before we attempt to bring back any extinct animals. Now let's look at some of the most popular candidates for de-extinction, starting with the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon was once the most abundant bird in North America, with flocks numbering in the billions. But by the early 20th century, they were gone. Because of their abundance, passenger pigeons had little natural predators. They were easy prey for hunters who killed them for food or sport. In addition, they were often caught up in agricultural expansion and habitat destruction. Today, the only place you can find passenger pigeons is in museum exhibits and in books. However, because they went extinct relatively recently, their genetic material is still available, making them a good candidate for cloning. In fact, a group of researchers from Yale University announced in 2021 that they had successfully cloned a passenger pigeon embryo. They plan to create a living bird in the near future. Next up is the woolly mammoth. The woolly mammoth was a large mammal that lived in Eurasia during the Pleistocene epoch. It went extinct around 10,000 years ago, likely due to climate change and human hunting. Like the passenger pigeon, the woolly mammoth is a good candidate for cloning since its DNA is still available. In fact, a company called Colossal is attempting to clone a woolly mammoth as we speak. The goal is to create a hybrid animal that's part elephant and part mammoth. The idea is that elephants and mammoths are closely related, so they can produce offspring. By editing the elephant's genome to include mammoth genes, scientists hope to create an animal that looks and behaves like a mammoth. Colossal says that their woolly mammoth will be ready in 5 to 7 years. But what about animals that went extinct long before humans arrived on the scene? Take, for example, the dodo bird. The dodo bird is a flightless bird that's found only on the island of Mauritius. It went extinct in the 17th century, likely due to habitat destruction caused by invasive species introduced by humans. Unlike the passenger pigeon and the woolly mammoth, the dodo bird's DNA isn't available, making it a less likely candidate for cloning. But that hasn't stopped some groups from trying. In 2008, a group of French scientists announced that they had cloned a dodo bird embryo. However, the bird died shortly after hatching. Since then, no one has attempted to clone a dodo bird. So what would happen if we did bring back one of these extinct animals? The answer depends on a number of factors, including the animal's role in the ecosystem, its interactions with other species, and the amount of genetic diversity it has. For example, bringing back the passenger pigeon would likely have a negative impact on the ecosystem. That's because passenger pigeons were not only hunted by humans, but also by predators like foxes and cougars. If we were to bring them back without their natural predators, they would likely outcompete other birds for food and resources. Similarly, bringing back the woolly mammoth would likely have a negative impact on the Arctic ecosystem. Woolly mammoths were large herbivores that lived in cold climates. They would likely compete with other Arctic herbivores for food and could potentially disrupt the delicate balance of the ecosystem. On the other hand, bringing back the dodo bird might actually be beneficial for the ecosystem. That's because the dodo bird was a flightless bird that evolved from a small songbird. It was large and flightless due to the absence of predators on Mauritius. If we were to bring back the dodo bird, it would likely fill a niche that's currently occupied by invasive species. And since it's a small songbird, it wouldn't pose a threat to other native species. Ultimately, whether or not bringing back an extinct animal is beneficial for the ecosystem depends on a number of factors specific to that animal. Finally, let's talk about the cost of bringing back an extinct animal. Cloning and genome editing are expensive and time-consuming processes. For example, Colossal, the company attempting to clone a woolly mammoth, has raised over $15 million in funding, and they estimate that it will cost over $100 million to complete their project. Even if we could bring back an extinct animal, would it really be worth the cost? There's no guarantee that it would survive in the wild, or that it would benefit the ecosystem. In conclusion, extinction is a controversial topic with valid arguments on both sides. The science behind cloning and genome editing is advancing rapidly, but we need to carefully consider the ethical, ecological, and scientific implications before attempting to bring back any extinct animals. Maybe we should focus our efforts on preventing extinctions rather than trying to reverse them. After all, it is a lot easier to save a species from going extinct than it is to bring it back from the dead. And remember, just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. And if you disliked this video, well, you can always click the dislike button too. But please do leave us a comment explaining why. Thanks for watching.